Testing, testing.
I can hear you.
Testing, testing.
Well, it's nice. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Let's see if we can, we do or don't? Yeah, I think we do. Do we have a quorum? I don't know. Let's look.
All right, we have Mr. Milliken, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. McCarrick. So we have three for finance, right? Mr. Milliken, Mr. Bartlett, Mr.
Right. I think that works, right? And we are right on time, so let's begin the Finance Committee meeting. I'll call it to order. Action is to approve the Finance Committee's minutes from April 25, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So move.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, since there's only three of us, I don't see any. So the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Good morning.
We have five.
We have five?
We have no action.
We don't have any action. So we can't do the consent item. Yeah, we'll have to maybe move the consent to,
Why don't we wait and see if we get a six? You can start your meeting and then we'll see.
we'll start with the
I didn't know
presentations and
somebody
work
was
back.
over there that I couldn't see over the crowd.
No,
So we'll start with you.
Start with.
Yeah. Oh, do we want to do
Yes.
the pledge?
Yes, we're gonna call the meeting to order, start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Ms. Rutland, if you would lead us.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are going to just skip our consent items for now and start with presentations. The first one will be the strategic plan update led by Ms. Linda Leedy.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Happy Thursday. Today, I'm going to be reviewing our progress towards successfully achieving our 5-year strategic plan goals. I was last here in October to give you an update through fiscal year 23, and here this is a shorter 6-month update through March of 24. And at this point, we are 3.5 years through our 5-year strategic plan. At your seats, you have a copy, a printout of the JWB's goals and strategies as developed and adopted by the board. So I thought for this presentation, it would be interesting to show the progression of our completion through the last 18 months. So this is the whole plan rolled up, and the blue bar represents our estimated completion, and the orange bar are our actual completions. So a year ago, through March 23, we estimated that we would be 47% through our plan, and in fact, we were 49%. And then in September, 58% anticipated, 61 actual, and then currently through March of 24, we're still ahead of the game at 72%. And I want to emphasize that these graphs represent the completion rate of the tasks that staff deemed and determined were necessary in order to achieve our strategic outcomes. In December, we present to the board our annual dashboard, and along with the dashboard, we have presentations on our programs, our collective impact initiatives, and our campaigns throughout the year, and then they tie together our activities, our reach, our budget, and our outcomes to get to our strategic pillars and goals accomplished. So now I'm going to break it down by each strategic result area and give you a few highlights. So in March 23, a year ago, for early childhood development, which is our newest strategic result area approved by the board for the first time with this plan, we underestimated. We thought, well, it's new. We're only going to be 39% of the way through as of last March. September, we thought 52, and then through this year, in March, we thought 65, but in fact, we're at 71%. This result area includes 2 strategies relating to grandparents, grandfamilies, as we now call them, and engagement. And in the last 6 months, our top-notch JWB staff and our community councils have worked really, really hard to put together magnificent programming for our inaugural Grand Families events. They took place in March, April, and May of this year, and by all accounts, they were really, really well attended and very successful. Turbo Babies also fits into this result area, and Turbo Babies campaign is in full drive and racing down the track. April and her team, we have to use those little, you have to. April and her team were here in January to give you a full update on the campaign, and we continued to build relationships and partnerships. We now have some with libraries, and we just did a ribbon cutting on a new exhibit with Great Explorations Children's Museum in St. Pete, and although the ribbon cutting took place in May, the work in the previous 6 months that had to take place to make that happen was not insubstantial. And then finally, one of the other strategies in this result area was to increase the number of quality early learning centers in underserved areas within the county. And in fact, in April, this board did approve a new quality early learning site in Clearwater. All right, moving on to school readiness. One of the strategies in the school readiness area was to identify and employ a cross-cutting cognitive, social, and emotional tool to address early childhood development. And that tool was identified early on in the plan. It's the Ages and Stages questionnaire. And now the work has been to get it out to make it a universal screener. The goal of the plan is to be utilized throughout the community so that developmental delays are identified early and then addressed early so that children are ready to get to school in VPK and kindergarten. Just a few weeks ago, our 0 to 3 think tank had a meeting with the Early Learning Coalition to learn all the work that they're doing. They've hired new staff to go out to the centers and educate them on the utilization of the Ages and Stages questionnaire. When to use it, how to engage parents, and really developing quite well in that regard. So through March of '24, we are at 74% for this particular result area. All right, school success. You'll notice that we were a little behind a year ago, still a little behind in September, and still behind. This really relates to data. We have not been able to evaluate the effectiveness of our funded literacy programs because we haven't gotten the data we needed to make that evaluation. Standardized testing changes at the state level have delayed the local reporting from the district to JWB. And then also the district wanted to modify the data sharing agreement that we have with the school district. And so we had some negotiations and conversations about what was going to be included in that. And I think we've come to resolution. And I know our IT team has gotten an upload and done a test. And it looks like we will be able to receive that data shortly and hopefully can catch up on this in this area. We're also a little behind here because this is where our grade level reading sits. We had some staff turnover, which caused us to be stagnant for a while, but now that staff is on board and full steam ahead, so that should be catching up as well. One positive note on this scale is another strategy is the integration of a universal screener in our pediatric practices. And I'm happy to say that now both of our practices are using the Pediatric Symptom Checklist, which is commonly called the PSC-17, and it helps pediatricians assess the likelihood of their patients developing a mental health condition. Again, early detection, early intervention. Prevention of child abuse and neglect. You can see we anticipated a year ago to be about 50% through, September 61%, and then March 71%, and to date we are actually at 78%. Our Children's Mental Health Initiative primarily sits within this result area. And you heard Becky Albert give a presentation to this board, an update on that in March with Dr. Weber, one of the pediatricians at North Pinellas. And the board did approve expansion of space and additional staff for North Pinellas so they can meet the needs of the families and the children they're seeing in their practices. And as you heard from Dr. Weber, the need is very, very great. In addition to the work in the pediatric practices, as Becky shared, we're continuing to build relationships, nurture partnerships We're working with NAMI Pinellas, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is really does great work in the community. They have amazing peer support groups. And in fact, they're doing a walk, an awareness walk on Saturday, and 7 of our JWB staff volunteered to participate. You know, they're becoming committed and really engaged in this whole effort. We also have a new relationship with SPC College for Kids this summer. We'll be working with them on their Health and Wellness Week. And then, of course, our work continues with our neighborhood family centers and our out-of-school time providers. We're also working with the Health and Human Services Leadership Board to determine whether we're going to move forward with an awareness campaign related to youth, mental health, and social media. And then finally, our Family Services Initiative, we have a dynamite internal staff team that's been working closely with our providers, and you're going to hear from them in July on aligning most effective practices for wraparound strategies for the clients that they are serving. Strengthening community. We were a little behind a year ago, and this is really a residual from COVID. You know, by definition, community, you're out in the community, and there was still some hesitation a year ago for everybody to be out and about. But that has receded, and as of September, we were a little ahead of the mark. And now in March 24, we're a little bit behind, but for a different reason. In this area is where we have some of our collective impact initiatives like childhood hunger, preventable child deaths, which includes our Sleep Baby Safely campaign. And then we added fatherhood and grandfamilies. When you do a collective impact initiative and you are serving as the backbone of the initiative, which JWB does and all those, it's really very, very staff-driven. Staff develop it, they lead it, they bring the partners on, they push it forward in order to sustain it. And we realized we really didn't staff appropriately in order to keep some of these moving forward. So we have rectified that. We've got a couple new positions, and hopefully these will be back on track in the next 6 to 12 months. And then finally, our organizational capacity result area is our internal facing result area. One of our strategies is to recruit and develop and retain really talented staff. And we've brought on a lot of new staff recently, and we weren't really sure how we were doing on that mark. So that's why we participated in the Tampa Bay Business Journal's Best Places to Work competition. And that entailed us submitting general information about JWB and then also a really extensive survey completed by 90% of our staff. And the results were stunning. Staff are very engaged. They really appreciate their supervisor and the support they get, and the work is challenging, and of course, the mission. Everybody really is tied to JWB's mission. We also received the Gold Seal certification for the Bell Seal Mental Health Workplace, which is given by Mental Health America in recognition of our benefits, our family-friendly policies, and just the general support we have for the physical and mental well-being of our staff. We also worked with our external compensation consultants to look at our salary matrix to see if we were still competitive to market. And the finding was we were just a little bit behind. So we moved all of our pay ranges up 2%, the whole range for the whole organization, not any individual, but the whole range, so that we could be competitive really in hiring. Because as everybody knows, recruitment right now is challenging for everybody. And then finally, our new provider database, Flex, is up and running. We have tested it, and we have now gotten our providers trained on this new system for both the finance and the contract sides, those modules. And they will be inputting their budgets into it in the next 6 weeks or so. And that will be the system used beginning in fiscal year 25 for all of that input of data and budgets. So we've got 18 months to go in this plan, and we've already begun prepping for the next one. And the next presentation you will hear is going to lay the groundwork for that new plan. But before I go, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
That was excellent. Thank you so much for, updating us on everything. I'm really glad to hear that we are progressing very nicely. Clearly, I couldn't disagree with you at all about the awesome staff that's out there really working hard to make things successful. And I think even with that, I think we have to be very careful. I think Leisha could become an actor and a movie star soon, based on her video that she did with Turbo Baby. So we've got to be careful not to lose her.
Next, we will have the JWB funding principles that will be led by our CEO and Dr. Mary Grace Duffy, who is calling in remotely.
I just
Thank
wanted,
you, Judge Moore.
just wanted to note that relative to Alicia, she is taking a delayed honeymoon, and we cheered her on and said, "Don't think about us." So we're hoping she'll come back even happier, even more committed. No, she's a gem. And I realized for this meeting, we're talking a couple times about the Turbo Babies video. We will have to show it here at a future meeting. I don't think we have it queued up to do that. So Mary Grace and I are going to go back and forth, and with her remotely, this could be interesting. But Kristen, do you want to give me the clicker?
Absolutely.
And I'll be caddying for Mary Grace relative to clicking slides.
Just hold it like that and press that to go forward.
Okay? Take it away, Mary Grace.
Thanks, Beth. And good morning to the board. It's really a pleasure to be with you again, although remotely. It's less of a pleasure to do it that way than if I were there with you. I think many of you know I've been involved with JWB since 2010 and involved with each of the strategic plans, the development of those plans during that time. And here we are again, as Linda mentioned, you're, kind of chronologically about 3/4 of the way through the current plan, and we're already beginning to think about the next plan. And as we set the groundwork for that, I think it's really important that we begin to think about, to know and to reflect on the current state before we get into any conversation about how you want to modify or add anything in the new plan. So today what we're focusing on specifically is JWB's funding principles. So if we look at, and the next strategic planning plan itself will be for FY 26 to 30. So looking at the current funding strategy, thanks, Beth, if we could go to number 3. Right now, JWB currently has 3 main types of efforts that are cumulatively creating the kind of community impact and impact for children and family that Linda has talked about in her results. So right now, the 3 impact initiative areas are internally created campaigns, such as Turbo Babies, Kindergarten Counts, the Preventable Child Deaths, which includes Sleep Baby Sleep. And with these internally created campaigns, JWB not only directly created those, but is very involved and has been directly implementing them. Then when you go down to the next area, which is collective impact initiatives, things like the Childhood Hunger Initiative, the Fatherhood Initiative, the Grade Level Reading Campaign, which includes several different programs. In these initiatives, JWB has served and continues to serve as a convener, a collaborator, as well as a funder. And as the name suggests, there are other providers and nonprofits that are involved both in the creation of the initiative and the implementation of it. And then finally, we get into community programs, and those are the ones in which JWB funds the provider agencies to deliver the programs and services. And while much of the design of those programs falls to the community providers, there's a lot of pre-work that is done by JWB to really kind of set the parameters of those and the focus of those. And I think when Linda talked about the new 0 to 3 initiatives, that was a good example of that. Okay, we can move to the next slide. So with all of these programs, even though they're different types, they've all got to meet the same criteria in order to be supported by JWB. The first is that they have to meet a community need. The second is that that need, whatever it may be, really has to fall within JWB's mission and capacity. And then finally, there has to be an indication that there will be a return on the investment, that they're effective, they provide a return on investment, and that there are agreed upon performance standards that they will meet. So what I'd like to do is to just go through this and talk a little bit more about each of those criteria and how they affect the funding path that JWB is currently under. So if we start with the community needs assessment, one thing that I think is really important to mention about this is that unlike other organizations, JWB does not let 5 years or whatever the length of the strategic plan is to elapse and then, just depend on what they did at the beginning of that process to really understand community needs. That in fact, that is an ongoing and constant process. And you can see here where there are things like convening various community groups together, participating in state and national conferences, gathering and analyzing data from internal and external sources, listening to you as board members, you're out in the community as you begin to emerge the community needs. So Beth is going to talk a little bit more specifically about how these things are operationalized now and what JWB is actually doing now in this arena.
So there are a variety of ways in which we gather community data and connect with the community. There are some I've just labeled community connections that we're always in contact with and listening to what their challenges are, what issues they're seeing emerging, what programs they are doing or adding. So those include the Florida Department of Health, with whom we have a robust relationship. Our JWB funded agencies are out front line doing a lot, and we hear from them in a whole variety of ways through the year and our contact with them. We have connections not only at the board level with Kevin Hendrick as superintendent of the schools, but we have multiple connections with other individuals in key positions within the school system so that we have an understanding of both what they're doing, what they're seeing. Birthing and the Children's Hospital, we have specific programs with the birthing hospitals and work with the Children's Hospital and their representative on our 0 to 3 convening, but they are really constant sources of input and people we can go to with questions. And then we work collaboratively with the County Department of Human Services. In many cases, it's to say, this is their lane with adults and this is our lane with children and families, but we want to not be stepping on each other as we do those things. And what they see with adults, for instance, substance abused mothers, is going to have a huge impact on removals into the child welfare system. Affirmed cases, there are substance abuse is number 1, 2, or 3 always in the reasons for those removals, for instance. So all of these things connect. We have certain planning groups that we support or we convene. One of those is our 3 community councils. You see those names come up for approval, but we have a North County, a Mid County, and a South County Community Council. They are not only active in their communities, they represent a lot of frontline folks who know the issues in their communities. And at their meetings, that always include one of our JWB staff folks, we share information about what we're doing, but we hear a lot from them about what they're doing and seeing and the issues that they think are out there. The Health and Human Services Leadership Board is a board made up of 3 of you, 3 JWB board members, 3 county commissioners, and 3 members of the school board, plus the sheriff. Over time, that group has raised up community-wide issues, including homelessness and mental health, and currently is raising up the issue of the impact of social media and digital media, particularly on children, but it might well expand out to all age groups. In some of these cases, we sort of divide and conquer. You know, we'll take the kids, you take this, what is the county best at? And in others, we work in tandem, but we learn from them, they learn from us. The 0 to 3 think tank, we've talked about it. We created this and brought in 15-ish, maybe, experts across our community in the 0 to 3 space from different sectors, some from hospitals, university, programs that work in this space, to advise us on where we would want to go with programming in this space when this became a part of our strategic plan. As well as monitoring those and continuously giving feedback on what's going on in the community and what best practices are. And then we hold provider quarterly meetings. For example, our out-of-school time providers, our neighborhood family centers get together, early learning providers get together. They learn from each other. We try to provide programming for them that will enhance their work, but we also hear a lot from them about what's going on and what the pain points are and what the successes are. There are other community convenings that we participate in. The Community Alliance is required by law since the child welfare system was privatized, and connects the child welfare system, DCF, and the community and community agencies. So we had a meeting yesterday with about 52 people in attendance from all aspects of the community that touch those kids. I chair that group. The Pinellas Integrated Care Alliance came out of the HHSLB's emphasis on mental health and is the county's response for the adults, but we sit on that group. Pinellas County Schools community discussions, we always have staff who attend those and hear what the school board is telling the community. There is a kinship collaboration for parents, grandparents, and grandparents, great-grandparents, and other relatives who are caring for kids. A very strong model to do a much better job with kids in terms of the stability of where they are and where they will stay, the odds of them reconnecting with their family of birth, and in so many ways there's great evidence that this is a much better way to care for kids who might not be safe in their own homes. But there's a lot of support that's required. So there is an agency that does this, but there are also collaborators across organizations that support the kinship efforts. We attend the Homeless Leadership Alliance. We're on both their Funders Council as well as the board, and have been for years, so we stay plugged in to what's going on in that world. Becky Albert serves on the Child Abuse Death Review, and am I right to say she's now been named state chair as of July for the Child Abuse Death Review. So one of the things we glean from that are the real data on what is creating unexpected deaths for children and what can we do about it. So they review every single death. And we participate in Zero Suicide Partners. Again, none of these are our organizations, but we're an effective collaborator, and we show up and we learn. We do a lot of data gathering, and we've shared a lot of this with the board at different times. The data set we really look to most is the Child Opportunity Index, and the map is there. The great benefit of the Child Opportunity Index is that it can look at 24 factors that will predict a children's success, and take it down to the census tract level as opposed to zip codes or other things. But can also run single factor reports, and we may, the county and others are doing some planning where some of that data will be helpful to them, and we will run reports to share with them. You know, what, with this single factor, how much is that going to cause different outcomes? We use the Annie E. Casey Kids Count Report that's generally by state. We look at and use the Alice Family Reports. We're, I think, going to get the raw data set for Pinellas County for those, for the most recent Alice Family Reports. That comes from the Suncoast United Way, thank you. The Suncoast United Way is actually a national United Way data program. We get information from the Florida Safe Family Network, and we also, as was mentioned by Linda, we are crossing our fingers that we will again get good Pinellas County school data that we use in analyzing programs, but it also is instructive to us in knowing what the whole landscape is. And as mentioned before, you guys are a core source of community knowledge and input. You're each in different sectors with different experiences, seeing different things, and asking great questions. So a key part of our community assessment and knowing what's going on and what's missing is what you all communicate to us at the board table throughout every year. Mary Grace?
Yep. So now we want to look at the second criteria that we talked about, is that in order for JWB to fund something, it really has to be within the mission. And I would say even beyond that, to really promote and make it possible for JWB to meet its mission. So if we could flip to the next slide, just thought it was always worth reviewing what the actual mission and vision of JWB is. And these were approved by the board several years ago. I can't remember how long ago, but you know, as it says on the slide, the mission that JWB is really investing is investing in partnerships, innovation, and advocacy to strengthen Pinellas County children and family. And I think certainly that investing in partnerships and advocacy and innovation, you can begin to get a sense of that already from the presentation that Linda did, and that's reviewing with you the community input and involvement that JWB has. And then the vision is really that all children in Pinellas County would have equitable opportunity to fulfill their potential and achieve meaningful and purposeful lives as a result of the efforts of JWB and its partners with that. Okay, so if we could, you know, that mission is obviously very child and family focused, as is the vision. It's also incredibly broad. I mean, when you think about the arena of working with children and families and supporting them and strengthening them, it is a very, very, very large arena. So there has to be some way to focus the funding that JWB does, the investment it does, the way it spends its staff time. And so right now, the parameters that are set up for JWB around that are, one, that whatever it is that's being invested in must be child and family focused. Secondly, that the focus would really be on prevention and early intervention. Given the charter that created JWB, it is not able to fund programs within the school system. I mean, there's clearly a lot of interest in education, you know, the grade level reading, the whole school success focus area, et cetera, but it cannot fund programs directly within the school system. And then the board made a policy, again, several years ago, that JWB should avoid supplanting other sources of primary funding. That could include, but certainly not be limited to, the child welfare system, the juvenile justice system, ACA, the Agency for Healthcare Administration, state medical funding. And, depending on the particular area that, as I said, that is not an absolutely inclusive listing, but I think it gives you a good idea of the kinds of things that you have decided to not supplant with that. Okay. So then the third area that we want to look at are actually the funded programs. And as we said earlier, there are those three different types of programs that you do. There are the campaigns, the collective impact initiatives, and then the community programs. And within those community programs, there are really two types. There are new programs that are funded through some sort of competitive process. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then there are recurring programs. And those are programs that, if they are eligible for recurring funding, will continue year to year. So let's talk a little bit first about the new programs. We can go to the next slide there. Thank you. Okay. So the board decided, again, a few years ago, that funding new programs really needed to be through a competitive process. I'm sure that even today, as board members, you get people coming up to you when you're in the checkout line in Publix telling you what they think JWB should be spending its money on, or what would be a great new program, et cetera, et cetera. And the board really decided that in order to ensure fairness, to make sure that you were really good stewards of the resources that JWB has, that this really had to be done through a competitive process. And again, these programs, like any other, need to be strategically aligned with JWB's priorities and mission. Once there is that competitive process, the review happens both by JWB staff and by community members who often are subject matter experts in whatever the particular program or need is that is being looked at. And then finally, once that very intensive review is done, then it must be approved by the board. And they too have to meet all of the three criteria that we talked about: meeting a community need, being within the mission of JWB, and being able to demonstrate effectiveness. So a couple of examples of recently that you've approved and that this process has been in play was one, all of the new 0 to 3 programs. Linda mentioned a few of them during her presentation. That's a new area for JWB in the current strategic plan, and therefore needed additional funding or additional programs. You funded some respite programs, and then of course the literacy programs that were funded. So they're all about the new program funding. Then if we begin to look at recurring funding, to be on the next slide, that is a case where once a program has been funded, it can be eligible for recurring funding. And again, it has to remain strategically aligned with the priorities. There are performance metrics that are included in the contracts, and they have to meet those. They have to meet the financial monitoring requirements. It has to be recommended by staff that it, again, is in the annual budget, and has to be approved by the board to put it in that budget. I want to just say something else about this, that, just as I think JWB is different than a lot of funders by looking at community needs consistently and constantly, JWB is also different than a lot of funders in that it doesn't automatically set limits on the amount of time a provider can receive funding. There are funders who like to do, quote unquote, provide seed money or startup money, that sort of thing. And I think JWB has really recognized that, unlike a for-profit business, if a nonprofit is really providing a needed service, they're providing it well, they're increasing the number of people, or children in this case, that they're providing it to, they become known as a kind of go-to program. All of those things in the for-profit arena would translate to financial resources. It's just the opposite in the nonprofit arena, that what that translates to is increased financial pressure on the agency because they have to do so much more and they're not, being paid by their clients. So this is a point at which I think the kind of recurring funding is particularly important to keep a continuity of service within the county. Now, again, having said all that, that continued funding is certainly not automatic. It has to meet the criteria that we just talked about. It is also possible for funding to be increased. There are a couple of ways in which that happens. If we could go to the next slide, you'll see that. So there are, ways in which JWB will increase the funding through cost of living adjustments, and that's based on local inflation, local compensation rates, et cetera. There may be specific community needs that require that there be increased funding. And then, another one that came up recently was the workforce stabilization funding, where there was really a compelling case was made about the difficulty with recruitment, retention, certainly additional costs that funders, or rather providers were experiencing. And again, these were not automatically given, but there was a very disciplined process for the application and the awarding of those funds. So one of the things we mentioned is a criteria for either getting recurring funding and or increased recurring funding was that the provider must meet the monitoring requirements. And so Beth is going to talk a little bit more about specifically what JWB requires in that arena.
So we do look closely at all of our funded agencies regarding their performance and, in essence, the return on investment. How much money are we putting in, and are we getting out what it is we expected and need and the community needs? So this happens in a few different ways. We have program monitoring, fiscal monitoring that includes review of the annual fiscal audit, as well as some sampling and testing of financial policies and procedures within the agency, good practices, as well as drilling down with a sample of payroll items and reimbursement items down to the primary documentation. We have contract compliance. We have a whole variety of requirements within the contract, including such things as, meeting insurance requirements that we believe are appropriate to protect JWB being connected to via grant to these agencies, and a whole variety of other things that we require within contract compliance. So these reviews are done typically once a year, but depending on the agency, some of these may be spread out if their history and their strength is such that the contract compliance piece doesn't need to be, all need to be annual. Our evaluation unit, in concert with our IT and data folks, look at the quality of services and the data review. So we look at first blush is the data clean? Is it complete? Is it clean? Does it make sense? Which takes a significant amount of work. And then looking at what are the performance measures that were already agreed to in the contract that we're going to be measuring from either external data or other sources of data. And I'll show you, and then in the program visits, our our folks do have interviews with program participants and program staff to see what other things are going on there that are exemplary or not quite what they should be, or in fact really problematic. And that has happened because our name is associated with these programs. We on occasion get a complaint directly to us about something that a program ostensibly has done, and we go back to that agency and work with them on sorting out what happened and what communication should take place. We're clear that we're the funder, not the operator of the program. That's ultimately the organization's responsibility. For program performance, we look at things like targeted service levels. They said they were going to reach 100 kids. Did they reach 60 or did they reach 120? We gave a budget. We staffed for, let's say, the 100. So we would care about them meeting those targeted service levels. Process metrics, so things that aren't outcomes, but we know lead to good outcomes. So I'm probably making Megan pretty nervous here, but hopefully I'm not going too far afield. So far, so good. So a process metric, for instance, might be for an out-of-school time program. What is the attendance in the out-of-school time program itself? So we know from data that for kids who attend a program like that, 70% of the time, their results, what they get out of it, is significantly enhanced. So, it's not a so what in and of itself, but we know it will lead to better outcomes. So then we look at outcome metrics, which, again, for an out-of-school time program might relate to some data we get from the school. What was attendance at school? What were the behavioral incidents at schools, in school or out of school? Suspension, thank you. And then as well, we like to look at how kids are doing academically with the evidence that shows programs like this enhance a child's engagement in learning and enhances their attendance at school and all those things that should lead to better academic performance. A challenge in this arena for both the Pinellas County schools and us has been in the last, I may misstate this slightly, but in the last 4 years, the state has required at least three different standardized test structures. And so what you want to look at is not just are the kids on grade level, but you'd like to know, sometimes it matters if they're one grade behind grade level, but a year before they were 3 grades behind grade level. So you want to look at learning gains, and it's hard to do when the tools used to judge that have changed year over year. But we do the best we can. Besides data like that might come from an external source, we might also put together, I believe we do in the out-of-school time programs, surveys for the kids on their experience and things that matter to them ultimately, not just were you happy and were they nice to you, although we probably say something like that too, but being in the program, do you have a better idea what you might want to do in the future? Within the program, is there a caring adult that you feel like you can go to and talk to? Those are all indicative of youth strength and resilience over time. So those are also relevant. You have at your table, don't try to read the slide. I know it's ugly, awful, but you have at your and this actually is Nurse Family Partnership, right? Anyway, the performance report, and we provide all of these to you as a board. They may not all come in one chunk, but all of them to you as our form of reporting to you on each program. And just kind of walking through it, starting up in the left-hand corner. First, this is Pinellas Nurse Family Partnership. I partly picked it because they kick it out of the ballpark, so they're hit it out of the ballpark. So describe the program itself, what it does. It's an evidence-based home visiting program. And then how much did they spend of their budget? So, that is indicative that the program budget was $935,000, the JWB budget was $752,000, and they spent $723,000 out of our budget. So that gives us a variety of information. How dependent upon us are they, and what was their lapse, and did they spend the money we give them? And then, next to that, really, the targeted service levels. How many kids did they, or in this case, probably moms, did they reach? And they reached during this fiscal year 22 year that this reflects is 94% of the participants that they targeted were served. And then you'll notice sex is all female because this is really a parent-driven intervention for pregnant moms and new moms. I'm sure we would include dads, but that hadn't been in there. We don't collect child opportunity index on those, and we do always pay attention to race and ethnicity, that those things make sense. Then over on the right side, we're giving very high-level information regarding our monitoring activities. So financial monitoring and program monitoring. So financial monitoring here, there were minor findings, which usually is there were some things we had to follow back up on a reimbursement or reimbursements, that all of the data didn't tie together, or that something was proposed for funding that doesn't qualify. Significant findings would be more significant issues relative to not completing JWB recommendations from one year going into the next year and they're still not done, or no audit or significant audit findings. And then program monitoring will be, all those things I mentioned plus many more. And our folks go test those things to assure that the agencies are in fact doing what it is that the contract requires them to do. And then there's a little discussion there, and if there's anything else that needs some commentary, you're going to find that in that paragraph. And then the bottom right are those outcomes that I talked about. So in this case, the targets are in gray, the accomplishment is in blue. The 4 key outcomes were children without placements during the program, so they were not removed from home. They're free from abuse during the program, children without placements following the program, and children free from abuse following the program. This is by definition a high-risk population, and so these are rather extraordinary numbers. Due to this intervention, lots of other good things happen, but we have kept these kids out of the child welfare system, which is a key goal to this program. Let's see. Mary Grace?
Yes. So we're at a wrap up here, and just want to say that Beth talked a lot about what JWB requires in the way of performance and return on investment and monitoring from the providers, and really JWB requires a lot from themselves as well in terms of funding. They really hold themselves to a high standard, and I think that if you were going to describe what that funding methodology is like, or characteristics of it, it's really disciplined, it's transparent, it's data-driven, it's responsive to the community, and it's fiscally responsible. And all of those things put together, I think, are important to really have a methodology that JWB can be proud of. It also, I think, is actually good for the providers as well. It doesn't make it easy to get. Let's be clear about that. But once nonprofits are able to get JWB funding, they have a chance to keep it, which is not always the case with other funders. They have ways of being recognized as a high-performing provider and institution because of the kind of data and demands that JWB makes. And I think the other thing that happens is that there's a really important network that's created among the providers. You know, Beth talked about the out-of-school providers as an example, getting together. Those are ways in which it's an added value to the community and to the providers. And it allows them to collaborate, even though at times they may be in competition with one another. So I think that regardless of whatever the strategic priorities are that emerge during this upcoming strategic planning process, JWB really has a solid, well-tested methodology for funding those priorities. Okay. So at this point, open this up for questioning, and Beth, since you're in the room, I think you need to help manage that. I really won't be able to see necessarily who's asking what question.
Do we have any questions? And before you hit your buttons, I just want to say thank you for the informative report. As always, Beth and Mary Grace, job well done.
I'll talk. I'm very surprised at that, right? Overall, I think this was a great foundation for our upcoming strategic planning. Mary Grace, thank you again for what you've done and helping put this together. I do have some questions, but this is not the right time for the questions. I would say, though, to ask you to really take a look at, you made a comment about the difference, somewhat of a high-level difference between profit and nonprofit. And as my time in both, I see the lines blurring pretty rapidly. In fact, after COVID and the like, they've kind of almost melded together. And so, like, what is the difference between, and I'm not asking for an answer, I'm just bringing it up. What is the difference between a client and a taxpayer? They're both customers. And so as we start to look at these things, I beg the question, if we need to, as we go forward and really take a look at what's happened and where we're headed, as a board, do we really need to look at, is our mission statement still the same? Is there something that we might need to tweak? I'm not saying it's throw it out and start over, but is there something that we might look at differently? I think the programs that we have, like Sleep Baby Safely and Turbo Babies and others, have taken us into a new realm. And so the question, you beg the question as to where does that lead us to in the future? So I think the strategic planning process is going to be a very interesting one. And I also think that what you gave us today was a great starting point and a foundation for our discussions moving forward. So thank you again.
Any more questions and no comments? Then next, and thank you once again. Next, we're going to move to the Early Learning Coalition, and that will be done by Ms. Lindsay Carson.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you all again. I am no stranger to this podium, and you've all seen my face before, I think. Thank you very much. And Mike, you actually just gave a great segue to the start of this presentation as well. So thank you for teeing things up. I'm Lindsay Carson, CEO of the Early Learning Coalition, and here today to give you some updates on some key things that's very sensitive. Some key things that are changing. And so to Mike's point, we have multiple customer bases. We are not just focused on one population. Children always are going to be at the top of our list. But our work supports families, it supports providers, and ultimately, as a community, our ability to provide access to high-quality early learning and school-age care programs helps parents work, businesses thrive because they need a workforce. And so all these pieces come together, not to mention our small businesses that are actually offering these services are, in fact, a large sector of our small business community here, and they have their own workforce. So without further ado, I'll just kind of jump in. There's been a lot of attention on early learning in the last few years. It's definitely been at the forefront of conversations among local chambers, great partnerships there, the Florida Chamber of Commerce and Chamber Foundation, the legislature. It's definitely a much broader topic. COVID did bring a lot of that to light because parents needed access, but the research that I know you guys have heard for years now about the brain development and what's happening and the impact of kindergarten readiness on long-term academic gains is not lost and certainly gaining some attention. Oops, I'm going in the wrong way. Okay, so I mentioned the legislature has taken note of this, and you guys have all heard about fiscal cliffs and those challenges with rising wages and families accessing services. So one of the things that happened over the last legislative session was a slight change to the eligibility for the School Readiness Match Program, which I will humbly thank you again for your support in the School Readiness Match Program. JWB does invest about $1 million in that. And with your match dollars that are matched dollar for dollar from the state, we're able to expand eligibility for the School Readiness Program. School readiness being those subsidies for low income and at-risk families so they have access to care. And as you'll note, this circled areas that change to the state median income, 70% of the state median income, from 200% of federal poverty level, which is what it was before, does give a little bump. And I will tell you, the majority of our families fall in that 3-person household size. We don't have a lot of families with 5, 6 people in the household. We actually tend to have smaller household sizes. And for comparison, if you see the light blue line, I'm sorry, it's a little harder to see up there. The rest of the School Readiness Program throughout the state, that is the eligibility threshold, that light blue line, and that did not change. Communities like ours that have the School Readiness Match are able to previously be at that green line, and now starting in July, we'll move to that yellow line. So when parents are facing, that 50-cent raise, that dollar raise, it will help some families access it, or they're not necessarily having to turn down additional work hours because they don't want to go over or they won't qualify for benefits. So this is a move in the right direction. There is still a lot of work to be done here, but it was definitely some momentum behind it. I know we're all sick of talking about COVID, but we received ARPA dollars, so many ARPA dollars, so many ARPA dollars, and it came in a few different forms, and these are coming to a close. So the first type was the ARPA stabilization. We gave out, this is Pinellas County, this is not Florida, this is Pinellas County, $55.6 million among a unique 545 providers over the course of 3 cycles of grants that went out based upon their size and quality metrics. There was a whole formula the state used to help us do that. And those providers were able to use those to invest in their workforce. In fact, they actually got a bump in their grant award if they invested in the workforce. And the purpose was really to stabilize capacity. We did a lot of work to increase infant capacity with this and expand our family child care home providers as well. Separately from that, so this was really pretty dictated by the state. Separately from that, we have ARPA discretionary, which is almost 17 million that we've been working with this year. And we have had local discretion within certain guidelines, of course, to do a variety of different activities that really enhance and strengthen our infrastructure in our early learning community here. We put almost $1 million in curriculum. In the past, curriculum grants would be like a preschool got a curriculum. And this year we were able to give them a curriculum for each classroom, which is logical in order to actually implement it. And we had the flexibility to do that. Almost $7 million into outdoor learning spaces to refresh the climbers, the toys, sunshades, turf, so that those buckets of sand kids come home with in their shoes and all the mulch and all the things are now looking pretty fresh. We partnered with the district to do a summer bridge program for pre-kindergarten. We've got a pretty broad materials grant that's floating out there right now where providers have really been given kind of a menu and they're figuring out what works best for their program, what needs do they have, so that they can get what's best going to support, whether it's expanding infant rooms or refreshing those, additional STEM materials. There's a whole variety of things. Some of them are getting new fences and locks for their doors to harden their facilities. So we're able to do that with this. There has been a plethora of training that over the last couple of years we've been able to do, and that continues. And our educators are able to take advantage of that and get incentives. And then on May the 4th, be with you, we got to actually rent the Great Explorations Museum and then advertise that to all of our school readiness and low-income families. Of course, it was open to the whole community, but we really targeted those children who don't always have the opportunity to visit the museum, and it was a great success. So those are one-time only, and the ARPA stabilization is done. The ARPA discretionary from our budget authority will end June 30th. So, and then it will no longer be. So $16 million in the budget this year. Next year, that line item will say 0. All right. So at its core, what we do comes down to the person in the classroom. And within our strategic plan, a great presentation y'all just had, one of our strategic goals has been to recruit, upskill, and retain a qualified early learning or early education workforce. We have a few different programs, and I'll go into some in a little bit more detail, but not all of them. But as you can see with the steps that are there, we essentially are building this pathway to bring folks into our field and then build them up as they move through. So the first step is being hired and coming in. Our Engage program actually covers background screenings and initial training costs, some retention bonus as they make it through their probationary period. It's really an open door for us to then move them into that pathway and get them on track for more of a career in early learning, as opposed to this is their job and next week they can get a job somewhere else. All right, so Elevate is one of the programs I will just humbly say we are most proud of. It's been highly successful, and Elevate does follow providers through their journey in their career and continues to do that throughout their time here in Pinellas County as long as they remain enrolled. And the purpose of this is to get them on that pathway and continue to elevate them, elevate them. So they come on, and there is actually a defined pathway through the Department of Children and Families, Department of Education, that helps our early educators move through different levels of educational attainment. And so we follow that. We want to get them on that pathway so that they're in a formal direction. They're not just kind of flailing and looking out there like, I don't know where I go next. I took a couple of trainings here, something over there, but really with some clear direction. We support that with wage supplements. We hear all the time about educators not making enough money. Nobody's disputing that. Preschool teachers make on average half of what a kindergarten teacher makes. Bachelor degree preschool teachers make about half of what a public school teacher makes, and they work 12 months. It's a challenge to keep them. You can imagine that whole recruit and retain is a big issue in our field, and so we provide these wage supplements every 6 months after a year of service to keep them in the field and to keep them with that provider so that they're not bouncing from one school to the next for a 50-cent raise. And those bonuses increase, those wage incentives or stipends increase based upon their attainment. So as they step up the blocks, so do the wage supplements that they receive. And one of the important things about this program is that it's a partnership with providers. This isn't just the Early Learning Coalition and the taxpayers, frankly, coming in and covering the gap, because the early education providers are also agreeing that they're going to, in many cases, up their minimum compensation plan so that together we're investing to strengthen their workforce and beginning to be a little more competitive in our economy. But they have an investment in addition to our investment. They're also agreeing to participate in program assessment, which we'll get to, but it's a quality metric that we do. So it's not just that they get the funding, but even if they're not required, they have to opt in to have that accountability, allow us to measure quality, and use that to inform our future programming as well. So as I mentioned, there's wage supplements. The wage supplements start at, when they first come in, the foundations, the pathway starts before they have a formal credential. They're required, all licensed providers are required to take clock hours. So there's 45 clock hours. That is not credit hours, that's clock hours, it's physical hours that they take to qualify to then teach in a classroom. And that's it. And so in order to be on the career pathway in foundations, and register, they have to take 3 additional courses, one of which is trauma-informed care, another is core competencies for early educators, and developmental standards. And so what we're doing here is raising the bar. Instead of having that 45 clock hours, we're really trying to lift, although it's not mandatory, we incentivize, but we're raising that bar, that standard for our early educators in Pinellas County. So they get an initial bonus when they come on to that, or initial supplement, but then as time goes on, they can get that within 6 months, but then they have to remain and they have to be at the employer for at least 12 months, but they can get up to $6,000 additional per year if they have a bachelor's degree. And $1,500 for a national CDA is pretty good. And for perspective, the minimum education criteria for a VPK instructor is that national CDA. And we've talked before about the impact of VPK really having an effect, a positive impact on kindergarten readiness, because they have those more qualified teachers. So even if they just get to that national CDA level, we know children are getting a much better quality experience and getting better prepared for kindergarten. So here's the exciting part, because those of you who've seen me before know I really love numbers and data. So we have been continuing to work with providers. We used ARPA to bring more and more providers on. In the last year, we've added 41 schools into the program, and those teachers are signing up now. We already have over 200, but we expect quite a few more coming on. Our retention rate is at 90% among teachers who are participating in the Elevate program here in Pinellas County. A retention rate of 90% is unheard of in the early learning space. There is typically a turnover of 40 to 60% in many early learning sites and school-age care sites, and we are at 90% retention. So what we know is that the program works. And we know that we don't have a blank check, I'll just humbly say. So you can see our continued expansion will be limited based upon funding. So we may have to have, some waiting lists, and we're managing that. We're also looking within our current portfolio in the Early Learning Coalition at where we can redirect resources with these data-driven decisions based upon what we see as working and having that impact on quality. All right, so we don't just say, hey, if you can get this, you get this extra wage supplement, but we actually help them to get there. And our goal is to meet teachers where they are and help them get to that next step. And it's not going to be the same path for everyone. One of the programs we have internally is a national CDA preparation program. This is 120 hours of instruction with all of the required modules. It's live instruction, and we focus it on, we have a track for infants and toddlers and a track for pre-K. But we don't just have the coursework. We actually have coaches who go out between courses and help them to implement what they're learning in the adult ed classroom and bring it to life in the early education classroom so that it's actually changing practice and improving the quality of the program. And they get additional materials so they can implement what it is they're learning. In just this past year, we've had 116 people enrolled. You'll see that there's 72 in progress. It takes oftentimes up to 18 months to kind of complete the program, get your observation by the National CDA Council. So it does take a little bit. We expect those folks to get certified next year. It's a little bit of a rolling process, but we've had great success with this. And our particular program is nationally recognized by the council. Now, in addition to that, we have formal scholarships. So we work with St. Petersburg College, USF, and other universities in the state to help teachers to move toward that formal education pathway. And their CDA actually also articulates into some college credits. What we do is leverage the TEACH program, which is funded through the legislature via the Children's Forum, so that we're not paying for all of it. But teachers that are participating get work release time, so their schools are allowing them time to study so they can actually do this, because many of them are working 2 jobs, and it's a lot to take on. And as they complete those courses, there's some bonuses, incentives along the way to keep going. And one of the things that we've found particularly valuable is having this advisor. We have in-house, we have someone who meets with them and kind of helps them navigate what's next on the horizon. If you take this class, you can achieve this. If you go this route, we can leverage the classes you took, 3 years ago, and you don't have to retake some things, and really help them navigate available scholarships in addition to ours, financial aid, and most definitely the curriculum and the coursework that they're taking. And so for perspective, we have 39 educators in the program right now. And as I mentioned, we leverage Teach. Teach covers the majority of it. And what we're really covering is what without additional support would be the cost to the teacher and to the center. We pay less than $12,000 a year to support these 39 educators to take what is typically 3 courses a year. And Teach covers the remaining $57,000. So it's a very cost-effective program for us, and obviously we leverage it to help our teachers move through so we can direct our resources to other things. All right, and it works. It works. Since 2021, we've had almost 100 get their national CDA. We have another group that has gone through they just released recently, some specialized certificates like in literacy, micro-credentials. We've had teachers moving through their associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree. In fact, this year we're celebrating 2 new instructors with masters in education through the University of North Florida. So we're seeing results with it. All right, so here's where I again, love the numbers, so here's where we go. So that pathway that I mentioned is a statewide registry. And we looked, when we were originally doing our strategic plan, of course, looked at baseline data. And our sample size was really low. There was 167 educators that were enrolled. They were kind of part of like a particular program. And we didn't really, a lot of our educators weren't on, a really structured pathway. And so that has been a big goal of ours, is to get them started and moving in a direction. So we now have over 1,000 that will continue to increase that are on the registry, and that bar is continuing to raise, because even if they're just on the registry and they haven't hit the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, we've raised the bar because they are now an extra 30 hours above. They've almost doubled their required minimum training that they have when they enter into the field, and they're on a pathway moving forward. Because once they register for that, our coaches are working with them to take the next step in their journey. So that's the educator side. Now, obviously, we want a highly qualified workforce, but ultimately that is to improve quality. So the other strategic goal we have is to improve the quality of our school readiness and VPK providers. And we do that largely through program assessment. You guys have heard this. I know we partner with JWB on these program assessments, often referred to as CLASS, that look at the environments in classrooms in our early education settings. And when those assessments are done annually, our staff actually sit down with a provider, review the results. They don't just get an assessment and then get handed a paper and say, good luck. Somebody sits down and actually goes through each domain, each dimension, and looks at where can we improve, where can we tailor improvement strategies for your site. And so they have that consultation, and they develop an improvement plan with those providers so they can continue to advance in their quality as a group setting. And it works. So the short version is the blue is good. Blue is good here. So we want to continue to see the blue grow. Darker blue is even better. The gray folks, they're not required to do the assessment because of their size or because of their enrollment in school readiness, and so they're exempt. But among those providers who participate in program assessment, this is showing you the range of scores. Our goal is to get them at least a 5 and moving up. And so you can see the difference from, we all know COVID kind of threw everything off. So 1920 is a little bit of a challenge there too. But even still, you can see as time has gone on, the blue bar gets bigger. I know, that's pretty simplistic, but that's what we're going for. In addition to that, which is really looking at that process quality, what's happening day in and day out in the program, we also look at accreditation, which is more structural quality, looking at ratios, instructor credentials, business practices, curriculum, that sort of thing. We continue to help providers attain accreditation. We've made significant gains in this and now have 90 providers, and there are currently 10 that we're working on to add to that list. We've had an additional 29 since 2021. So our strategy around getting more providers accredited is working. And it's important to note that both for program assessment and for Gold Seal or accreditation, providers get paid more through the school readiness program based upon their Gold Seal designation, based upon those scores. There's different tiers of performance incentives so that we are, the reimbursements they get for school readiness are paid at a higher level through a quality performance incentive. All right, so teachers are important because we want higher quality in providers, but we want the higher quality in providers because ultimately we want children to have equitable access to high quality. This, I have talked for years about flipping the colors, flipping the colors. So the University of Florida, Anita Zucker Center does different dashboards for us. And essentially, if you look on the left in 21-22, you see red numbers. And that is the shortage of capacity in high quality for the children in the school readiness program in those respective zip codes. And as you look to the 22-23, you see things turning black because there was more high quality available and accessible to those children. And so, and it's not just in, one zip code, obviously you can see it spread out. And the darker the blue means the higher percentage of school readiness children are participating in high quality sites. And there's some pretty significant color changes on there, which we're really proud of. And this is possible, really in large, definitely, because our providers have really stepped up. And all of these programs and all of our efforts, the teachers, the providers have stepped up to make these things possible, which allows children to better access it. In fact, if you look, once again, the blue bar is good. So when we think about what percentage of children are actually enrolled and attending the high quality, it's one thing to have high quality, it's another thing for families to actually be able to enroll and attend high quality care. Our percentage of school readiness children that are attending those higher quality sites continues to grow pretty substantially, knowing that our strategic goal to have equitable access to high quality is, we're definitely getting momentum behind that and seeing those numbers shift on that. Family engagement, differentiated supports, it all kind of comes in together for us. On the special needs side of things, we have developmental screenings, social emotional screenings that are done for all children as they enter the school readiness program, all birth to 5 kids. And one of the things we had kind of piloted with JWB and continue to grow is getting more and more parents to do those screenings. Historically, they were done by the preschools or the family child care home providers. And we are really engaging, parents have the option to do it. So we've been working more and more to get the parents to do the screening so they're engaged in looking at their child's development and those milestones. In addition to that, we have navigators that are now working with parents to help them take those results and then figure out what to do next. Do they need to go to all children's and get access to early steps? Do they need to go to one of our mental health partners, depending on what the screenings results say, and actually helping parents make it to the next stage and getting access to the appropriate evaluations and potentially services. Expulsion has been like the holy grail in terms of getting actual data on it. I'll tell you, this is not absolutely perfect, but it's a heck of a lot more than what we've had in the past. We've been able to build that into our data system for tracking and really working to identify the baseline and reduce expulsions, which are far more common in the early learning setting than they are in the K-12 setting. They're private businesses, so they can make those choices a little differently. And we now have a behavior specialist assigned to every provider that's contracted with us in Pinellas County. Now they're spread pretty thin, but they are able to make routine visits. They're also available on consult where providers can call them and say, I've got a real issue with Mike, he doesn't behave, and we need to develop a plan with them, and they'll work directly. They also provide overall guidance and technical assistance for them as well. And that has proven to be really successful already. And we've also launched last year Conscious Discipline, which is evidence-based training and philosophy on managing behaviors, managing positive behavioral supports within the early learning setting with training and coaching. And that's now becoming a broad, we're working toward a countywide implementation. We've had hundreds of teachers literally going through that training already, and we'll continue to do that to support that and prevent expulsion. I'm almost done, I promise. All right, I'm really excited about this one. One of our goals, again, is that family engagement piece, which is really difficult because oftentimes we don't actually see a family. We rely on providers. We rely on the preschools and the family child care homes to really support family engagement. A lot of our work with families is done through an online portal. It's not necessarily a face-to-face conversation. But we do want to see parents have those opportunities to engage as a child's first teacher. And so we recently launched Ready to Read Pinellas, which is a free book delivery program for all children in Pinellas County. They get a free book each month until their 5th birthday, and they just sign up. And it serves many purposes. Number one, books in the hands of children and the opportunity for parents to read with them. Many of the books are available in both English and Spanish, and when they are bilingual, every child gets the books bilingual. They're English and Spanish within the same book. There's parent newsletters with strategies that are tailored specifically to the books themselves. So there's, it's tied to the title of the book. And we're able to promote local programming. We will be featuring Turbo Babies as one of our resources in the community and rotate those. We also get a data set, and many of you have heard me talk about the voluntary pre-K program and trying to get more folks into that. So as children become eligible and they're due to register for it, we'll now have a much better data set to start more, directly recruiting those families as time comes on, along with kindergarten registration as well. So it's new to us, but it's already gaining momentum, and the folks in the community are really excited about it. Questions?
Any questions or comments from the board? I have a comment. I can't wait to let my families in court know about the Ready to Read.
Awesome. We can get you flyers and all the stuff. Anything else?
What?
Thanks so much for your time and listening.
Wait, we've got a few more.
Oh, my bad.
I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you so much for that really thorough report, Lindsay. That was great. I enjoyed it.
And one thing I would like to lift up, maybe for a little board input, either now or in the future, is one of the programs you just heard about to enhance both the quality and retention, which leads to quality, of early childhood provider staff was their Elevate program that Lindsay went through. And the incentive for that program is for the providers, the individual providers, to both attain certain educational benchmarks to complete these classes or these things. But the other is retention for, is it for a year after that?
Yeah, they can continue to get those supplements. They have to they have to be there for at least 12 months before they qualify for those bigger supplements. And then they can continue, and they're paid semi-annually.
Okay, as long as they're there.
As long as they are there. And those payments go directly to the teachers.
Right.
Not the provider, but actually the teachers get that cash in hand.
So as illustrated for us, that program looks very promising. It looks like retention has been really high. JWB board policy has been without CEO exception at least, that we do not pay for bonuses. And that's both within JWB and within our agencies. So I just share that to say that appears to be a really promising program that we would not invest in, despite the fact that we invest in a variety of things with the Early Learning Coalition, because of that requirement. And I don't know whether the board would have a different feeling about the way that program is structured.
It's a wage supplement, not a bonus.
It's a supplement, not a bonus. Yeah,
Not a
yeah.
bonus. It's all in the wording.
Well, ponder, and I may bring that back to you.
Thank you.
Unless you all just say, no way, Jose.
I think it's worth looking into. It is a supplement, not a bonus. So, but it absolutely has shown that it's very successful. This is the second time I've heard the presentation because I am on Lindsay's board. And Ray doesn't want to hear me talk anymore. So I think it's worth looking at.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindsay. We're going to go back up on the agenda to do the consent items. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Any nays? Thank you very much. Now we're going to go,
Barbara had a question for Lindsay.
go ahead. I'm sorry, we have a question.
Yeah, just one question about the bonuses. I think that.
Supplements.
But this is the point I'm getting to, is that that's a very targeted purpose, which is focused on educational attainment. Bonuses can carry good work, you deserve a break, whatever. I think if we really look at it as an investment in an educational ladder, it takes it to a whole different level than just a bonus, and I think that that's worth a discussion.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to our Chief Executive Officer's report.
All right, well, it's been a wonderful and busy time since we were last together in this room. First, I'm thrilled with every aspect of this year's Kids First Award luncheon, and you're seeing some of the pictures there. It featured the power of connections as its theme, and we lifted up the tireless work of our 4 Kids First awardees. Frontline folks who provide services and who you had seen here at this board table. We listened to the courageous and resilient stories of our 3 Spence Education Award recipients, and they are and were amazing, and made the 34 Dillinger McCabe Leadership Award nominees who were in attendance feel very special for having been nominated. We also paid tribute at that event to our dear friend and a fierce advocate for children, Bob Dillinger. We broke some records too, with a little extra juice and work by many, including Becca Teeter. We had 40 honorary hosts, including all of you, as well as legacy or past board members, packing the room with a record-breaking 608 guests. There were 54 honorables in the room, plus dozens of business and community leaders. It was well attended. As mentioned, we had 34 Dillinger McCabe Leadership Award nominees in attendance, and the feedback was that they felt extremely honored and appreciated for their contributions to kids, as well they should, as we named Pinellas County Board icon Carol Cook this year's top recipient. And of course, there was an army of JWB staff led by our communications team who worked hard behind the scenes to make it all look easy, but magical, memorable, and meticulously seamless. I give them many folks in this room great credit for that. Then we had the Great Explorations Museum ribbon cutting for an exhibit within their little kid area, focusing on JWB Turbo Babies and its exhibit at Great X. So we had a ribbon cutting. Special thanks to Mike McCurrick for being part of the program there and for his leadership role and being a tireless and effective champion of our Turbo Babies campaign. He has really helped us move the needle with this campaign, and there's so much more to do, right, Mike? We had more than 75 folks in attendance, including board members from both JWB and from the Great Explorations Museum. We had other campaign partners, including friends from the Department of Health, and families with babies and tots. So it was both a place and a time that kids, babies, and tots could wander around safely, and they did a little bit of socializing with each other, too.
So all of those are considered part of JWB Turbo Baby's pit crew, starting with parents. So in addition to unveiling the Turbo Babies exhibit, we premiered the Anytime is Turbo Time video, which plays on a loop in that tot area. So while parents are sort of captive audience as they're watching their kids do the same things 83 times, they will have a video directed to them to remind them of the easy ways in which they can implement the Turbo Tots themes and suggestions. And we will show that to you sometime soon. We have some real stars within our realm, I would just tell you that. We also received gold for our commitment to mental wellness. Mental Health America recently named JWB a 2024 Bell Seal for Workplace Mental Health recipient. This was our first time applying, and we were recognized at the gold level. I believe there are bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Platinum's like you get to keep a puppy on your lap all the time. Or, I don't know. It's pretty high up there. We might not get to platinum, I'm just saying. But we had a score of 84 out of 100 of all the possible practices and policies that we might have. The Bell Seal for Workplace Mental Health National Certification Program recognizes employers committed to creating mentally healthy workplaces. And according to the Mental Health Association, only 1 in 4 meet the Bell Seal certification at any standard, and we were towards the top of those standards. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so within JWB and out in the community, we're sharing resources and information as well as partnering with organizations such as NAMI Pinellas to raise awareness about wellness and to help destigmatize mental health. May is also Water Safety Awareness Month, and as such, JWB has been partnering with the City of St. Pete Fire Rescue, Johns Hopkins All Children's, and others to raise awareness about drowning prevention. This is part of our JWB's Preventable Child Deaths campaign, and it works across the community. Drowning is the leading cause of death for children ages 1 through 4, and unfortunately, with all of our water, Florida leads the nation in drowning fatalities for kids under 5. Last year in Pinellas County, there were 37 pediatric submersions, and tragically, 4 of those were fatal. And I think we have to remember that some number of those other 37 or 33 resulted in serious brain damage and future issues for those kids. Some shook it off and were absolutely fine, but a submersion is very serious. And it takes very little time for a child to drown in a pail of water or quietly in a swimming pool. The life-saving message, the key single message, is the need for constant adult supervision around all bodies of water. And there are a variety of techniques and things that can help in that. On May 1st, our own Chief Program Officer Karen Bogus spoke during a joint press conference on JWB's role and our investments in countywide water safety prevention efforts, information about door alarms, vouchers for free infant-child CPR certifications, and free swim lessons. JWB also took part in a Water Safety Month proclaimed by the City of St. Petersburg and a public education water safety community event. We had our third and wonderful Mid-County JWB Grand Families event. As you recall, we had one in North County, we had one in South County, and this one in Mid-County that was created and staffed both by our staff, but also the Mid-County Community Council, who always come out in force. It was on May 4th at the Pinellas Park Performing Arts Center. It was very well attended, which is the first step. We can't share information and assist families unless they're there. It was focused, of course, on grandparents, great-grandparents, and other family members who are raising kids who often the last time they were connected with kid resources and how schools work and so on was 20-plus years ago. So they are dealing with their own issues, perhaps of food insecurity or their own wellness issues that a 25-year-old parent might not be dealing with. So they need special and different supports. The resource fair was in Mid-County, was truly a multilingual event reflecting the diversity area families and featuring materials available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, and there were translators on site. So a special thanks to JWB's community engagement team and the 3 community councils for hosting highly successful inaugural Grand Families events. We'll tell you they're already talking about next year. On May 2nd, more than 40 JWB staff made their way to Raymond James Stadium in Tampa to support our organization being designated a 2024 Best Places to Work by the Tampa Bay Business Journal. I was up in Chicago caring for a new grandchild. I have no apologies for that, so I was not there. But I understand it was a warm and beautiful day and that everyone who attended had an amazing time. They had all kinds of different activities available. Our folks took the opportunity to get to know each other across departments and units and getting to know people they didn't know as well, and just bond and have a good time. They enjoyed mingling, enjoyed taking part in various activities, and even, boarded the Bucks pirate ship for a group photo. Then I wanted to provide an update to the legislative session review that Becca Teeter gave from our last board meeting. As you remember, the session is over, but certain pieces of legislation are still making their way to the governor. And the budget will not be final until July 1st, although you can read the tea leaves on a lot of things before that. Before I circle back, though, to Tallahassee, I want to note that our advocacy efforts with the Florida Association of Special Districts, under the leadership of our own Chief Milliken, included work at the federal level on H.R. 7525, the Special District Grant Accessibility Act, which doesn't sound real exciting, but wait, read on. Becca was in D.C. for 2 days of legislative visits, including those with designees from the executive branch, Senate offices, including both of the Florida senators, committee staff, delegations, House offices, and various other professional staff. She was up there talking about H.R. 7525 and other issues. What it requires is that the Office of Management and Budget clarifies how a federal agency recognizes a special district as a unit of government for the purpose of federal financial assistance eligibility. So without being named as a qualifying local government entity, special districts of all kinds, including Children's Service Councils, including JWB, cannot apply for various federal funding, federal grants that might well be very much in our wheelhouse and support local efforts. And the same would be true of all kinds of other special districts within what they do. So this would add us as a named potential recipient of those grants, recognizes this definition of our unit of government, would have allowed us to apply for emergency funds or care dollars or community development block grants. It also allows the census to create data points related to the populations that we serve. So its status is that, last I know, H.R. 7525 passed the House, and now our work continues in the Senate. So a good and busy month all the way around. That's the end of my report. Oh, yeah, I do have one other thing one small thing. No, we have been on a search for a chief financial officer. Laura Brock's last day was March 1st. We engaged a recruiting firm. We've been working really hard at interviewing a variety of people, giving them simulations, looking at questions they answered, doing remote interviews, and on and on. And we invited a top candidate here last week on Wednesday, and he spoke with our executive team, talked with the finance committee managers who would report to him. I talked to him beginning at the end of the day. Sabi Guidicelli from HR talked to him multiple times. He gave a mock board presentation as well as a board memo. And we felt very convinced that he was the right candidate for JWB. We extended an offer Friday, which he accepted. His first day will be June 10th. So his name is Robbie Stivers. Most of his professional background has been within university or college systems. He spent a long time in Tennessee with the University of Tennessee, managing significant capital projects, prioritization, procurements. And he has also spent some time at the CFO level with two other academic organizations, as well as the city of Dayton. I personally called 8 references because I find that's the most helpful thing to me in trying to make a good hire that works for everybody. And all of those were exemplary and supported the candidate's background and what happened in his resume and why, that sort of thing. So I would expect he'll be in attendance at the next board meeting. He will probably be a bit shell-shocked with everything we're going to give him to read and do. So you'll still see me and Diana probably giving the presentations relative to the budget at the June board meeting and the June Finance Committee meeting. So I look forward to you all meeting him. Thank you. No, I'm done.
Yes, I rushed back in. I got myself 30 minutes. Whew, caught my breath. We're going to go to the informational items, and I will go ahead and open up the floor. You have it.
Thank you. We had a presentation today with Mary Grace and Beth about program monitoring and the importance of that as it relates to the organizations that are funded by the JWB money. And probably about every other time that we meet, we receive these list of informational items, which includes the information on financial and program monitoring. And 98% of the time, when I pick it up and look at it, there was a problem. The problem is already on the way to being corrected if it has not been corrected at this time. Looking today, I see our old friend Arts for Life Academy reappearing yet again on this. And it goes back now to fiscal year 2021 to 2022 auditing that we have not received. And I don't know if we've received it to this date yet.
We have received now.
Okay.
And a couple of years late, but yes.
A couple of years late. And so as a board member, I'm a steward, as is the rest of the board, of the taxpayers' money and where this goes, and we need to know where it goes, and we need to know on an annual basis. And for somebody to go back and reconstruct something from 2021 that they should have done then, and then they should have done it in 2022, and I know that the JWB staff has expended a significant amount of time and effort to extract these documents right up until the current day, and no guideline has yet ever been met that is required of them by the contract. So my position is if you were just a regular person and you had somebody doing work for you and you had a contractor that you're supposed to follow the rules and guidelines in that contract, if they did not, then there would be consequences. We haven't done a thing to them. And I'm not comfortable with knowing where, I don't know how much, I guess they get a pretty substantial amount of our money, right?
Your contract with us this year is $508,000.
Okay. So I'm not comfortable as a board member not knowing where that money that we're giving them is going. And quite frankly, I would suggest to the board, and I don't know if we even got a quorum now, enough to do anything, but that they be notified and they should send a representative next month and suggest who they want to have for his replacement.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. I see Arts for Life is here. So I'm very happy to see that, by the way. Thank you for being here, and very good timing. So I was going to wait to comment, assuming y'all are going to make public comment, or you had put in cards. Okay, I was going to wait to comment on this item until we'd heard from them, but since it's been brought up appropriately so, maybe they should be given an opportunity to respond or make a comment at this time. It's up to you, Madam Chair.
Do we have?
I'd like to give kind of some background.
Yes, I
And
was
they can
gonna-
respond to that, which I think will be more helpful to them to be able to do that.
And before you give background, if there are any more comments, and then that way after Beth gives the background, I think the background is going to be really important because I think Mr. Bartlett does have a great point. And so it would be good to know what processes and steps have been done both from Arts for Life and from JWB to alleviate some of the issues that have been reported back to us.
Yeah, some of this information is literally, hot off the shelf within this last week, so it's more up to date. By way of background, Arts for Life was put under a corrective action plan that was initiated last June, so almost 11 months ago, June of 2023, after a long history of financial monitoring issues. The original due date of that corrective action plan was April 19th, 2024. The cap was issued due to the failure to complete and submit audits for both fiscal year 2021 and 22, as required by Juvenile Welfare Board contract, as well as several repeat financial monitoring findings, including requirements to adopt certain financial policies. So we had made those recommendations in earlier financial monitoring reports, and they continued not to be done. So due to these longstanding shortfalls and the lack of progress and the apparent inability of the agency internally with its leadership and staff to accomplish these, Arts for Life was required in the cap also to engage an ASO, an administrative service organization, which they did effective December 2023, and which JWB funds. Progress has been made, but we continue to have significant issues. The 2021 and 22 audits were completed by December 31st, 23, which obviously they were 2 and 3 years late, but when we did the cap, that was the deadline to get back on track, that those would be done by December 31st, and that the fiscal year 23 budget would be done on time 6 months after year end, which, by the way, is a really generous, that's our typical requirement, but that's a very generous time period in which to finish an audit. Many funding agencies require, and banks require, 3 months after year end. So the ASO was put in place in December. The fiscal year 21 and 22 audits were completed by the end of December. And that was the cap deadline to catch up on these long overdue audits. And then the deadline for the fiscal year 23 audit would have been March 31st. March 31st came and went, and only after that due date did the agency ask for an extension. Well, they were already in non-compliance, so an extension wasn't granted because it had already passed, it was already non-compliant. They committed at that point to get the audit to us by April 15th, and they did that. In between, or let me go back a minute, starting back last May or June, our CFO, Laura Brock, was in conversation with the agency about the failure to get the audits complete and what their plan was going to be to get there. At that point, as I recall, they said, they just hadn't been able to find an agency and were kind of throwing up their hands. And Laura was quick to say, this is a hard and fast requirement. This really has to be done. And ultimately, it was done. But we've been in conversation with management and the board all the way through this process. So the fiscal year 23 audit was received late. It was a clean audit with no material weaknesses, though there may have been some audit adjustments, and we've not asked for that information, but we do have some lingering questions we're going to ask. But we don't know if any of those are really problematic. They're just things that we want to clarify because they could be problematic. There were 6 other financial monitoring findings that were to be addressed from the June 2023 cap. So that was put in that cap 11 months ago. About 14 of them included fiscal policies and fiscal practices to be implemented. Those could have been done all but immediately. But after 6 months on the cap, as of March, there was achievement on 1 out of these 6 different findings, one of those being a whole bunch of policies, and some progress on the other 5. So one of these findings was that per our contract, not only is an audit required every year, but each agency is required to upload requested data, just like they would for a financial audit, to our SharePoint site as the basis for our annual fiscal monitoring review. So after each agency's annual audit is received and reviewed, our fiscal monitoring analysts schedule the annual fiscal monitoring visit as required by our program contracts. And by end of business day, 2 days ahead of that monitoring visit, a specified list of documents is required to be uploaded to our SharePoint site for review before that visit. That list that was due May 8th at end of day was in fact communicated to the agency in mid-April. So there was plenty of time to do that. May 8th came, and a significant amount of the data was either incomplete, in error, or there was clarification that was needed. For instance, we might request specific data from a specific month for payroll, and we're not looking at every transaction through the year for this, but for selected payrolls, we would look at the payroll tying to what JWB paid. And then we would look at an item or an individual and look to make sure that the hours they were paid for tie to their time card, so that the veracity of what we were ultimately reimbursing, we're testing those systems. So we didn't get all the right thing. If we asked for instance, September, and I may get the details wrong, but September payroll, September in fact maybe had 3 payrolls and they only gave us 2. Or they didn't give us the time card for the person that we asked for in the right time period. So we couldn't do the procedures that we would be counting on doing that Thursday for a Friday morning meeting. And so our fiscal analyst assigned to this agency went through everything that had been received on May 8th and made a full list of things that were either missing or wrong to send back to them to give them a second chance at getting these data put together. On Friday, May 10th at 9 a.m. was when the fiscal monitoring visit was scheduled, and we got on the Teams call and nobody else was there. As we came to find out later, the executive director had a family emergency and was in flight during part of that time, but we were calling the agency and calling the executive director and got voicemail both places. So one would have thought somebody at the agency would know, where the executive director was, or that she was out of town and might have notified us. We did get a call from her, in an airport on the way, that, what had happened and why she wasn't present. And she committed at that point that the board secretary, Latifah Paramore, and the representative from the ASO would in fact complete all of those data submissions by Friday at 2. Friday at 2 came and went, and those documents had not been uploaded. Ultimately, by Monday, they had been uploaded. That occurred on Sunday at some point in time. Someone communicated to us that, oh yeah, they were done on Friday, which they weren't. I'm not sure why there was that misstatement. So as of yesterday, all documents that exist have been uploaded. Upon review of those documents, JWB noted that of the 14 JWB recommendations back on the fiscal year 22 fiscal monitoring report with the agency, 3 continue to remain unresolved. Now, one is submission of the audit on time, which was not done. A second is submission of all the fiscal monitoring data on time, which was not done. A third, I believe, is a complete, appropriately formatted fixed asset register that lists the items owned by the agency, their cost, their depreciable life, and so on, including who the funder was, which ends up being significant at any point in time. Later, those things cannot be disposed of without, if there's still some depreciable basis, unless that amount's refunded to JWB. So it's something we continue to monitor. So, there are a lot more pieces. What I would say to this board is that the personnel at JWB really have worked hard to assist this agency in succeeding. By all accounts, the program that is done by this agency is exemplary. It's in North Greenwood. It's where kids need it. It's done exceptionally well. It's the financial management that has long been problematic and that continues to be problematic. And I'd have to say the events of this last week have just really disappointed our financial monitoring folks, who would have thought, I would have thought if you're on a corrective action plan, I would have been submitting my documents a week ahead of time and calling our fiscal analyst and saying, were they all there? Are they complete? Are we all good? And instead it was kind of skidding in at the last date, only to have incomplete documents there. So I'll leave it at that. Lots more detail. I will mention our staff, our key staff, and the agency typically have been meeting over this last year every other week to talk about where things stood. I'm sure some of those were missed, but that was the general cadence. And both Laura Brock, our CFO, and then Karen Bogus, our Chief Program Officer, have been in contact with them, including a board member, at least 3 or 4 times over this time period between them.
Mr. Hawks, I saw you had your light on.
No, I was just going to say, Madam Chair, at this point, I think it would probably be appropriate to hear from Arts for Life before we have any more questions.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Jay Henson, and I am the founder and executive director of Arts for Life Academy. And as indicated, we have been providing services since 1991, approximately 32 years in the community. We have an after-school program, summer camp programs, community outreach and engagement activities, community performing arts ensembles, and community productions that we participate in and present within the community. We would like to address the issues that Ms. Houghton just discussed. There have been many activities And the past couple of years, we have our treasurer here to address some of the issues that were going on fiscally. But just taking off at the end of the conversation, I would like to say that we do take this very seriously. There were instances and things that have occurred that we have been diligently working at. The staff at JWB has been absolutely amazing. Like Ms. Houghton indicated, we worked with them every couple of weeks to have conversations to make sure that we were on task. I did call the fiscal monitoring person the day before all of the documents were in, and I talked to them and said, we have uploaded everything. I want to make sure that they saw it because we were having issues. Last year, we had issues where the information that I was sending in was not going to the SharePoint, so we had to address that. And this year, I made sure that we had several practice runs because I had never done SharePoint before, but we had several practice runs to make sure that I was able to upload the documents in the proper spaces. So I did talk to them, and I showed them we had completed everything as far as my understanding, and we sent everything in. They acknowledged that they had received it. Once they received the information and they went over it, there were items that became a second part of the issue that they wanted to go over, such as I submitted an invoice and it was not readable, so I needed to make it clearer so that I can resend it. And I eventually, the third time, it wasn't approved, I had to contact the vendor and have them to resend a better document and upload that. So there were a lot of things that were adjustables, information that was sent up. In some instances, the requests that we received seemed one way, and when we went to submit the information, if they wanted September for one person, July for another, that's what the chart looked like, but they said they wanted everything on everybody. So we had to go back in and just upload additional things. So I do want everyone to know that we are taking this very seriously, and we have made, thanks to the tutelage and support of the JWB staff and our contract manager and all of the assistants, we have talked about doing some turnaround things, one of them being adding an ASO, which we have contracted with, and we are doing tremendous work with the ASO, communicating and making sure that we're all on the same page, since they are an ASO that's familiar with the JWB funding and all of the practices, so we are working on that. We are eliciting, we are hiring a center director, which we haven't had for a year, so as a result, I've had to do several different jobs at the facility, being i.e. center director, executive director, had to train a credential director. So there have been a lot of hardships, a lot of work in recalibrating and restructuring and reorganizing the organization. But we are on task for all those things. We are turning around, and I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer so she could talk a little bit about some of the challenges with the audits and how all of this kind of came about. This is Ms. Paramore.
Thank you all for allowing us to have the opportunity to give our perspective. So as Ms. J mentioned, my name is Latifa Paramore. I am one of the actual founding board members of Arts for Life Academy, as well as I serve as the board treasurer. I am a certified public accountant, and I have been for over 25 years. Significant experience at Ernst & Young, and more recently a partner at Prager Metis, a global accounting firm. So when it comes to fiscal responsibility, it's something that is extremely important. As many organizations, not only not-for-profit, but as everyone knows, from a public accounting perspective, I worked with a lot of companies that had to go through restructuring. And so from our perspective, we've had a significant amount of restructuring over the last 3 years that, as someone mentioned earlier in the presentation, really was spearheaded from COVID. So we had a long-standing audit relationship with our auditor, and the reason why we became late first is because the auditor kept promising that she would be able to get the audit done in a timely manner. She fell extremely ill, and during that time, she had to retire. So we were waiting, we requested several extensions from JWB, which they had granted to us at that time because they understood, they were very understanding of the situation. So our auditor, we thought that we would have the same auditor at that time. After waiting through 2 extensions, she said she would not be able to do the audit. So that means we had to pivot immediately to find another audit agency. But by this time, there were 2 audit reports that were due. And so we met as a board and we said we need to find another audit organization. In conjunction with that, we needed to work with JWB on an action plan. So we submitted, sent out an RFP so that we can have several different, auditors provide us different responses to the audit RFP. The auditors were selected by the board and we went into action immediately. So in many restructurings, it starts with one catalyst. So from having difficulty with the auditors to several key members of the organization leaving the organization caused significant instability. So even to the point when we were working with JWB and one of the individuals, I don't know if you're familiar with Rudy, but he was the person that always submitted the reports in a timely manner to JWB. He left the organization after 15 plus years and moved out of state. So that left that key role unfulfilled. And even though we were trying to recruit people, it's always difficult when you have a transition. As you all know, you're hiring a new CFO, I believe. It's gonna take a transition period. And so we were not able to have someone in that role to be able to submit the information in a timely manner. Our relationship partners at JWB again said, well, I know this is gonna have a significant impact to the organization, and it did. It's a small organization, a one-woman show at this point, in addition to the financial person that was, submitting documents, et cetera. Also, the center director role was no longer there. So we had to understand how we got here and how we should implement a restructuring plan. So we were not resting on our laurels and thinking that this was, something that would just pass without us stepping in and taking action. So as a board, we implemented a restructuring plan as well. In addition to the plan that we were with JWB, we also implemented a restructuring plan. So some of the things that we identified in the plan: outdated processes. So we had a lot of processes and procedures that were outdated. We did not use technology in the way that we needed to. It hindered the flow. One of the things that we've implemented now is digital reviews. So instead of Ms. J having to print everything out and manually sign it, now we're implementing a digital review. So that's one form of technology in addition to systems that we've implemented. We learned personnel constraints. And so we have now recruited and identified talented individuals with experience in not-for-profit organizations to be a part of the organization. And then we also learned things, of course, cannot be done in silo or a solo person. And so for the last 2 years, because we did not have the proper personnel in place, many of the responsibilities were on one person. And that's never successful. Today, we stand before you as Arts for Life, representing the board as well as the community, and we are 100% confident that the restructuring plan, as long as working with JWB, we are at the position where we have the right people on the right bus in the right seats going in the right direction. The ASO was implemented in February, less than 1 quarter, and they have come in and really turn the organization around from a financial perspective and a day-to-day perspective. And In addition to that, as Ms. J mentioned, we also are implementing a succession plan. So by us recruiting the center director, we have outlined a succession plan so that we are not in this position, again. And as we said, as I started out saying, this is a fundamental restructuring. It had a significant impact on the organization. Earlier, one of the board members said nothing was done. I beg to differ. There were a lot of things done. Every action item was completed. We have 3 years of unqualified or clean opinions. We have 3 years of no significant deficiencies or no material weaknesses. So yes, the reports were late, and we plan, now that we have a great audit firm that's not one-person show. We have a regional firm that understands the importance of the deadlines, and they've committed to getting the audits done in an extremely timely manner, as well as, implementing the ASO. So there have been a lot of things that have been completed. And as Ms. J mentioned earlier, in many audits, you have an original list, and then you have a subsequent list. So Ms. J was under the impression that all of the original items were submitted. There was an email received middle of the day, I think 10 a.m. on Friday, asking for subsequent items. And yes, myself, as well as the ASO, worked to get those additional items uploaded. And I believe it was perhaps 7 items where, let's say Ms. J uploaded all of the documents required. There was just one piece of it, let's say from the bank perspective, that we needed to ensure that it had cleared, that needed to be submitted. So things like that we worked with her to get done, and we can't change the past, but based on my 25 years of experience, I firmly believe that this was a standard case of a restructuring, that the organization is ready to move past for our partners at JWB, as well as our stakeholders, which is the people of the community.
Good morning. My name's Gloria Campbell, and I think I know a few of you. I am a board member. I joined the board about 4 years ago. And the reason, I've actually worked with Ms. J for probably 30 years, as a lot of JWB organizations, from St. Petersburg to Clearwater to Dunedin to Tarpon Springs, actually. But I joined the board to help Ms. J. I absolutely agree with you. We recognized quite a while ago that there was a lot of work to be done. And as with most small organizations, when you have one person trying to do it all, things are going to get missed. As far as the audit goes, we have at every board meeting, we have talked about the audit. We've talked about finding someone to do the audit. We've talked about finding money, the $30,000 to $40,000 it was going to require to do the audit. And so nobody's been sitting around doing nothing, let me assure you. That has been an item, it's been an agenda item, it's been our focus. We've talked to Ms. J, we've done what we could. There have been board members. They're taking inventory, cataloging information. So nobody is sitting around doing nothing. To the gentleman who talked about making sure that we have fiscal responsibility, that these are public dollars, you're absolutely right. And I'm the public. I get my tax receipt, and right at the very top it says JWB. And I, as a taxpayer, am proud to support what we do in the community with those dollars. But I can tell you, when you can get a clean audit, yes, it should have been done, but you can rest assured that your taxpayer dollars are being used, and they're being used properly. That nobody's going to Hawaii or California on your dollars. They're actually going back into the community. You talked about the Stellar program. There's no other program in this county that can talk about the fact that there are individuals, young people, who are on Broadway, who have received Grammys and Tonys, who are dancers in major dance companies. There's nobody else who can do that. And my question to you is, if you take the money from Arts for Life, who are you going to give it to? Who are you going to give it to that can make the impact that Arts for Life is doing? So what we're here today to say is, as Latifah said, look, we've got everything in place now. We've got the ASO, we're up to date on the audits. We've got Ms. J, an assistant. We're bringing in a new center director. We've done the reorganization. Now is not the time to talk about taking funding from an organization that is on the right path, that has done what's necessary, that's in place at a time when they can really move forward. Actually, we're planning on being here probably next fiscal year asking for more money to do more things to make this organization greater. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chair?
When the lawyer in me wants to stand up and argue with you, but I'm not going to do that. 3 years is a long time, and I would hope in the future, if we encounter anything that is of that time limit, we should have already known from the staff here, and we should have taken corrective action that would have got resolved. So that's my point.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, valid point.
You know, I'm not questioning anybody's honesty here, but we have an obligation. We've got hundreds of organizations that we have to deal with. Well, we've got hundreds, but a lot. And so it's our responsibility, and I'm on the hook, just like your board members are on the hook for where the money went, if there was money missing. And it's normally just a quick process. But again, 3 years is just too long, and all I'm suggesting is that in the future, you respond more quickly to the requests from the JWB people. We don't have time for a lot of these people to spend this much time with you. But
Right.
We agree.
I'm done.
We agree. Yep.
Mr. Chair, thank you all for being here. It's better late than never, right? And so thank you again. You are taking this very seriously at this point. I think that our staff has been probably frustrated. And I have done a lot of research on this. I've talked to Beth quite a bit about it. And I think the bottom line is that you're a victim of your own success. Yes. And now you know that you need help. And CPA Paramore, you're a volunteer. You know, I'm on a bunch of volunteer boards. One of the boards I'm on has been in significant litigation. And I used to say, I'm the only lawyer in the room not getting paid to be here, right? So as the volunteer CPA, you know, you shouldn't be the one who is working, you know, overtime to get the stuff uploaded. That should be someone who is, that's their job, that, right, you know, that works for the organization. So you said you have an ASO?
Yes, and they're great.
And they just started in February of '24?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a good step. That's a great step. I'm very pleased that you have the audits done. Obviously, an audit that's done 2 years late is not good. I mean, I'm glad it was unmodified. But, you know, we're going to move past that, right? So I'm glad you have the audit from '23 done and it's unmodified opinion. That's great. We have some policies and procedures that we need y'all to implement. And those are best practices things. And so hopefully with our staff, we can give you, you know, samples or drafts or whatever. I'm sure that we can help you figure that out. And hopefully the ASO would be able to do that as well. You know, I did everything I possibly could before we defunded Hope Village's RCS. And that organization literally gave me no choice. Like, I could not defend them at that moment in time. And I know that you are not that organization, that you guys are here to work with us, and that you're gonna give us everything we need to keep you going. Because the one thing I know for sure is your program is exemplary, and it provides critical, you know, so much to these children who otherwise would not be exposed to the arts, and can really change lives and will positively impact every child you interact with. And so I don't want that to go away. What we have to be sure of is, as Mr. Bartlett said, is I can't just trust and not verify. And I know that you all are not using the money inappropriately, but at the same time, if something happens, then it comes back on us. And we've been in that situation over the years. It's been a while, but we've been in that situation over the years. So we have protocols in place to verify the tax dollars, and we hold everybody to the same standard. And I'm glad that you all are getting the assistance you need and the support you need in-house to help you with that. And I thank you, Gloria and CPA Paramore, for your volunteer service. And I know that you volunteer in many, many different capacities throughout the community. So very much appreciate you being on the board and supporting Ms. J and what she's doing. But like I said, it's never too late. At least it's better late than never is what I meant to say. And it's not too late as far as I'm concerned. So what I want to do, and I know we don't have a majority or a quorum here, but I'm going to personally follow up on this with both the staff. I'm going to have a personal meeting with the staff and the financial monitor to figure out what it is we need. And then I want to have a meeting with you all with Beth. And so, you know, we can then communicate that. And then I'll be like an informal liaison to try to facilitate this. But it's an important program. Y'all are on the right track. We just need to get over the hump, whether we have technology issues on your end or whatever it is. I'll be happy to help.
Thank you so much.
Facilitate that. Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments? And do we have any members of the public?
I just want to say that what I think will suggest if and because all of the requirements for this cap were not met by May 31st, that we will, per what I'm hearing, extend that cap, say to October 31st, with the understanding that we will do a mid-year financial monitoring, perhaps in early October, based on the September 30th data, do the same kind of sampling and same kind of review of implementation of policies and so on at that time, to see if in fact all of these pieces that were not the way they should have been this time are in fact corrected.
Sounds good. That's fair.
Just,
Okay, good.
just one real quick. I'm happy to hear that this has turned out the way it has because you do have an exemplary program. There's no question about it. 3 years of restructuring, you and I we've been in that. 3 years is a long time for a restructuring. Typically happens a lot faster than that. Understanding the issues that you're dealing with, just let's not go in any longer, please. I mean, I know we've got our board member who's going to stay with you and help focus on this, which is fantastic for Brian to stand up and do that. It's a meaningful program, but we can't go any longer than that. You've gotten 3 years already. We wouldn't do that with anybody else. If you didn't have that type of program, it wouldn't have happened. So please stay focused on it, get it done. Make sure that we have, by the time frame that Beth has identified, that we have the information that we're looking for and that your restructuring is done, on track, and we never have to have this conversation again. But thank you.
Okay,
I think
thank
we
you.
have some cards for public comment.
Okay, thank you. We have the Family Center on Deafness, Anthony Verdea, sorry about that.
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning, JWB Board and Administration. I want to start off by saying thank you. And I am humbled to be here today representing the Family Center on Deafness Board of Directors, staff, and the deaf and hard of hearing community. We are so grateful that JWB has been a huge supporter of FCD for many, many years. And this year's Children's Summit was a great theme of belonging. And what FCD gets to do is we get to ensure that we create an environment where everyone who is deaf and hard of hearing can come through our doors and feel a sense of belonging. As a community that is often largely marginalized for their use of language and their culture, we get to bring them in, and we don't even just allow them to feel that sense of belonging, but they get that security, they're getting the support, the acceptance, the inclusion, and are able to function within a group that identifies like themselves. And with that, we then believe that we can help create a stronger foundation for each and every one of their personal growth. Our mission is to make sure that we provide enhancement for opportunities to be there to support the deaf and hard of hearing youth community for education, communication, and for their independence. Tampa Bay is the 5th largest deaf community in the country. Think about that for the minute. 5th largest community in the country. Currently, according to the statistics that we could find, and I'll be honest, there's a lot of information out there that is very antiquated in regards to the community, but we were able to work and to get some numbers from the American Community Survey from 2022. And according to that, currently here in Pinellas County alone, there are 1,975 youth, 0 to 18, who are deaf and hard of hearing. And there are 24,768 adults. I am thrilled to say that at this particular moment, we are able and are serving 101 youth in our program, and we are serving 78 adults. So we, because of the great work of the FCD staff and the support of JWB, are able to reach some of that community. And we hope to continue to grow and to expand and to reach even more. We have 4 primary programs that we provide to all of our families that come through the doors. That's birth to 5, and I'll just put a little plug because we've heard this a lot about Turbo Babies. Currently, our birth to 5 is working in collaboration with Turbo Babies to create it and make it more accessible to the deaf and hard of hearing community. I was thrilled to see on screen there that the presentation that's being presented at Great Exploration Children's Museum has captions on the video. Go JWB. That's an exciting thing. And we know we're going to continue to reach more of the families through Turbo Babies working in collaboration with Family Center on Deafness. We have our elementary program, and I'm thrilled to say that next week, I think on Thursday, is that correct? We get to go before the Pinellas County Licensing Board to be voted on for our child care center licensure to become permanent. We accomplished all the trainings, the goals, and all of the expectations, so we now get to stand before them next week, and if you could all send positive vibes. We've had great reports, so we think we're going to be good. That's happening next week with our elementary program. Our middle school program has had a huge success rate in the fact that this last couple of weeks we've been able to celebrate 8 of the middle school youth that we serve who will be transitioning into high school and will continue on with their education into the high school experience. Our high school program has also had great success. 7 of the youth who are working with our program for after school and in classroom support were mentioned on the honor roll this year, and we have 3 that are graduating. One of our young ladies was able to get a full scholarship ride to Gallaudet University because of the great work and accomplishments she has done throughout her high school programming. The thing that's so unique about Family Center on Deafness that's different than maybe the other family centers, not that they are not as great as we are, however, we get to work and support our families for years on end. 2 of the high school students that I just mentioned to you, one, he and his family have been working with the Family Center on Deafness staff for 15 years. So what's great is that we're not only there for a short term, we're there for that long term. And we get to go on this life journey of helping these kids grow, learn, get that experience through education, communication. And as now we're getting to see the fruits of our labor, they're going on to independence. One of the other young ladies who we worked with, she has been with us for 12 years, and we have seen her struggle through homelessness, through food insecurity, and yet here she is striving, going on to college with that full scholarship. So those are just a couple of the great examples and opportunities of privilege that Family Center on Deafness has to serve our community, primarily because the Juvenile Welfare Board is such a huge supporter of what we do. We are the only nonprofit organization in all of Pinellas County, Tampa Bay, and as far as we know, the state of Florida, who is providing the same programs and services that we've just mentioned. For the board of directors, I've given you each a purple folder because there's so much more that I should be saying and need to say to you, but please look through it. I've also invited you each with a letter to come and visit Family Center on Deafness because I truly believe when you see the program in action, when you see what we're doing and how our work and service is impacting these individual lives, you have to be impressed. This is not something that I've done. This gets all recognized because of the staff that have committed numerous hours of service, education, and support to these youth. I can't end without just helping you recognize that for a deaf and hard of hearing youth who's in Pinellas County, there are very, very few places that they can go where there are people who look like them, use their language, communicate like they do, and feel that true sense of belonging. FCD's doors are open to this community, to their families, to ensure that they never have to feel isolated or feel like they don't belong. They belong and they are FCD. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much. We all, on behalf of the board, appreciate what you've done and what you continue to do for the community. It's a great thing that is occurring. I grew up with an individual who his first child was born deaf, and watched as they struggled for resources to be able to help them with that, and they were at a time when you really couldn't access a lot of the facilities. So it means a lot to a lot of people in the community. Thank you. Any other comments?
See, we have April anniversaries, which I'll go through really quickly. Amanda Bear, 2 years. Cindy Matson, 3 years. Joanne Delarnia, right here, 7 years. Lorraine Hayes, 8 years. And Ann Crawford, 10 years.
Okay, that's all. Anything else? Guess we're adjourned.
So how do you feel?
One again.
Oh.